And welcome to the VSA Capital Tech and Transitional Energy Podcast. It's Thursday, the 15th of December. It's the last one we're going to do before Christmas. Now, I've been slightly under the weather. I've not even been in the office this week, Phil, have I?
No, you have not, Andrew. And of course, I've not been in. It's my first because of train strikes, but it's the first day in, and I have to say, it's lovely and warm.
The things we offer for our staff. A nice warm haven for you, Phil.
It's fantastic.
No, I've had this flu bug that's flying around, and I must admit I've been knocked out. So, but nothing will stop me doing this recording as our Christmas special. But there's a few things we probably need to just tick off first in terms of what's been going on, particularly as we call this the Tech Trans and Brands podcast sometimes. And we did announce on Monday a huge deal for Silverwood Brands. It was about £250 million in total, which is big. They acquired basically 20% of Lush and also 90% of Sonatus in Japan. It's a transformational deal. But what is interesting about this deal is that it wasn't a reverse takeover. A £10 million company did a £250 million acquisition. Now, if you'd been on AIM or the London Stock Exchange, you could not have done this deal. We did it on Aquis. Aquis has much more pragmatic and sensible rules, and we were able to do it under their takeover rules. And actually, it's in the interest of shareholders. It also saves a huge amount of money. It means your stock isn't suspended. So it's a real eye-opener, I think, for companies. And we've had a lot of people saying, how on earth did you do that? Why can't we do it? Well, the answer is you can do it, but you've got to be listed on Aquis. And this is another reason why we think that Aquis is the exchange of the future, the NASDAQ of London, all these other things that I'm always saying. But it was an amazing deal, and I've got to say it, Phil, but well done, VSA, for doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very, very good.
In fact, whilst we're on brands, we have had interims from Samarkand today, which actually weren't bad, really. And we also had another of our clients, S Ventures, did an acquisition of a company called Hero UK, or sometimes known as Javella, which does, it's basically gluten-free bread, isn't it, Phil?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And, there's plenty of, a lot of demand for that. That's in the UK, and it's a very well-known brand.
It is. I mean, they've got about 50% market share, haven't they?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And people eating gluten-free products is just growing.
Yes, it is, and there are more, food products coming out. Awareness is increasing, and the supermarkets are stocking more as well, which is good news.
So there you go. News from three of our sort of brand companies that we talk about. We could I normally do a bit of a general intro, but because I've been feeling so ill, Phil, I really, my general intro is we probably should be looking at the biotech sector.
Yeah, you're probably right. Unfortunately, that's one sector that we do not cover. But no, I mean, I was to say it has been a quiet week. We've seen US interest rates move. That was last night. Differing news coming out on inflation in the States. Probably not as bad as expected, Andrew. Is that your kind of take on it? That it's maybe easing a bit?
Yeah, I think it is. And actually, find out just as we're sort of talking, the Bank of England, of course, has put interest rates up 0.5%.
Mm-hmm.
They put them up to 3.5%. So, but yeah, I think the general feeling is that actually we basically probably had peak inflation, and it's now coming down. My own view, which is extreme, is I think we may even hit deflation in H2 2023. I'm not quite sure what Mike Lynch will do then. I guess he'll be going out on strike saying we want pay cuts. Please give us pay cuts. No, that's a lie. Actually, he won't be doing that. He's just a political activist. He's not really at all interested in the welfare of his employees. Did I just say that? I did. Anyway, there you go.
Yeah, you did. But we had a very nice train driver this morning, kept us informed when we had. He said, apologies for the delay. We were 3 minutes late. I thought, well, we had no trains yesterday, so it's very good of them.
It's very good.
But our service is generally good. So there we go.
No, look, I'll tell you what. Going into 2023, I think that don't expect a massive mega bull run. We've just had a pretty good run, in truth, in sort of October, November. But I think most things are going to get a little bit better in 2023. I think valuations are pretty low, so I'd be pretty upbeat about it, to be honest with you. But I'm just not going to get too excited. Oh dear, there's that lurgy again, you see. So actually, there was this week, despite me not feeling well, I've had to field quite a lot of calls, and I've been running around a little bit, and I think we've got to discuss it. I know we end up discussing it far too regularly, but Invinity Energy Systems, it was having an amazing run this week. From about they presented on November the 29th at the VSA Aquis Showcase event. I think the share price at that stage was about 22p. Until yesterday about lunchtime, it hit 62p. Momentum was really getting into it. Unfortunately, in the afternoon, they announced a Riverfort facility for $10 million with an immediate drawdown of $2.5 million, and the price somewhat dropped as people were disappointed the need for this facility. There's a lot of things I could say. Unfortunately, most of it I cannot say live on air. But unfortunately, when they've been winning all of these new orders, although they get a deposit, they actually have to place orders for a lot of stuff to build the batteries, and it's steel and it's pumps and all this sort of thing. And so you get these huge swings in cash flow. And I think it's fair to say that probably there was a little bit of a cash crunch, which actually will probably then rectify itself completely next year. But they just needed a little bit of a oomph pre-Christmas. Now, and this solved that oomph. Could there have been better ways of doing it? Maybe hindsight's an easy thing. But I'm still convinced that this company is going to get there, and it's going to be a global winner. I didn't say a lot there, actually, Phil, but I've got to be very careful what I say, haven't I?
No, I understand that, and certainly having covered, we've both looked at advanced engineering businesses over the years, and we all know that when, you get a lot of orders in, which they have, that it requires, fact is, you've got to build the bits, and when you've got stuff that's on very long lead times, you've got to order it well in advance, and you need the money with suppliers to do it. So, working capital and in the cash flow is always something that everyone looks very closely at, but this is well known for the engineering business.
Anyway, look, the good thing is the stock is starting to bounce back a bit today. It's 50p on my screen as we speak. And the other good thing, funny enough, is the volume now is turning around at about 2 million shares a day, which at 50p is a million pounds worth of stock being traded every day. That makes it a very liquid stock, which really helps investors. So in a way, there is a little bit of good news there. God, I can always be an optimist, can't I?
You can, even when you're under the weather, Andrew.
Right, that's enough for me. What have you got? Anything you want to run through before we go on to our little bit of Christmas special?
Well, yeah, exactly. So we're a bit thin on company results, understandably, this week, getting so close to Christmas. But excuse me, I'll cough for a minute. RWS Holdings, which is ticker, I think is RWS. The market cap on this one, Andrew, I've not got it on screen right now. I think it's well over $1 billion. I mean, this will be very much a liquid stock. But RWS Holdings, they provide, this is translation services and backed by technology. So those of you that understand language translation will know that you can do so much with software, but it has to be contextualized into the way we do naturally speak. So when they're they will translate for companies around the globe, and so those little instruction sets you get, they're in multiple languages. It's companies like it's RWS that have to do that. All those websites are in different languages. RWS will do that, and then ultimately, they'll do that for commercial businesses around the globe. But they also provide these services for specialized industries who have their own languages. Engineering is one of those, life sciences, the law, and healthcare. So, very broad-based international business. and they had reported results, and these were, I think these were full year results they've come out with this week, and they had revenues increased by 8%, which I think is organically for a global business is pretty good. But what caught me was the profits were up by about 50% to 80 million. So revenues are up to 750 million, just under, profit before tax of 80 million. And their earnings per share were up by, basic earnings per share up by 48%. But it looked to be quite a positive result for them, good cash generation and paying down their debt as well. So that's one that's worth looking at. And I remember I used to
PBT actually 83.2 million, Phil. Give them their credit. Yeah. It's even better than you thought. And actually the market cap is 1.32 billion. And on top of that, it has a nice dividend yield at 3.15%.
Yeah, there we go. So I would have a look at that. They acquired SDL in language services, and I used to cover SDL. And one thing I remember about it is that it's just a breadth of companies that use these services around the globe and the industries. Well, you can imagine how important they are. So it's a good business to have a look at.
Well, you could either use them, or you could use my middle son, because he's fluent in French, Italian, Mandarin, you name it. He speaks everything. It is Christmas. Come on, I'm allowed the odd quip. I'll shut up. You carry on, Phil.
Sounds like a business idea there, Andrew. RWS will acquire your son if you're not careful. Right, so Gresham Technologies, ticker's GHT, 143 million market cap. They had a trading update and an upgrade, which is something that we all like to hear. So an upgrade in their estimates, and this is software for financial services, and they cover things like payments, cash management, account reconciliation, data integrity. And they said in their trading update for the current financial year to 31st December 2022, group has continued to perform strongly. Like that, Clarity, which is their software, recurring revenues performing in line with strategic growth plan, and their services associated with the software and non-Clarity businesses ahead of planned revenues. As a result, the board now expects revenues and earnings to be ahead of current expectations, recently upgraded on the 4th of October. So it looks like another upgrade, and it's saying that the board anticipates revenues of at least 48 million, adjusted EBITDA of 10 million, so slightly ahead of expectations. So that looks to be good, and the forecasts are, just having a quick look at those, revenues of 46 million, I think, for full year, adjusted EBITDA of 9.6, and then next year 10% EBITDA growth, and it's trading on an EV/EBITDA of 13 times, and you're getting 10% growth there, which is again quite well worth looking at, and especially with two upgrades on the go in recent times. It shows us some real momentum behind the business.
Yeah, it's a good one. What else?
That's Gresham Tech. Cohort, which I have to say is a business that I am not overly familiar with, but it's the ticker is CHRT, 168 million market cap, had interims, and this is in defence. So their tech covers tracking and fire control systems, communication systems for naval and military, surveillance systems. So our listeners can go and take a closer look at that, electronic warfare. They said, now bear in mind, obviously the market is very good for defence. I think the UK MOD is probably quite a big customer for them. But their revenues for the period were up by 29% to 78 million. Their operating profit was 5 million on that, from 1.7 million. But their order intake was 1.1 times the prior period. So, yeah, progress. I don't know. I don't know this company well enough.
So, I love that. Here's the analyst talking about a company. Going, I don't know it well enough.
Absolutely,
Classic.
He's in denial.
Do you want to talk about something you know where you're talking about?
But it's in the right space. Hey, I knew about that, you rude man. I knew about Gresham Technologies and about RWS, honestly.
Oh, it's Christmas time. I'm taking the Mickey.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Right.
Should we get on to the Christmas bit?
Yeah, why don't we? Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, why don't we?
So I'll tell you what, first of all, I did say if anybody's got any ideas they want to put in, send them in. And we've had 2 ideas. And actually, I've had a quick look at them this morning. And I've got to say, they're really good ideas. I can't give a full view on it. But the first one I was sent in was Cymec Atlantis Energy. Do you know it, Phil?
No, I don't. I'm looking for something 400.
It's actually really, really interesting. I think the reason maybe is it's unfortunately fallen out of bed completely over the years, and the market cap now is down to about 10 million, and probably no one is really looking at it. It's sadly still losing money. I haven't done enough work this morning on it. I've been a little bit tied up to fully understand how they're going to manage their cash. But from a 10 million market cap company that has come back a long, long way, you've got all sorts of possibilities. If I just read you, it's the about us. It's the best way of explaining it probably. Our aim is to be the global leader in the creation of new sustainable energy projects for the benefit of our planet. That's a lovely thing to say, isn't it? Basically, yeah, they build sustainable energy projects. So they're building the whole project. Their big one is the Uskmouth Sustainable Energy Park. And they do the whole thing. They've got battery energy storage systems, you name it. They've got the power generation, wind power. It's really quite an interesting company. I'll tell you what, I have not given it full credit here in terms of describing it. In that respect, I do apologize. Not very good. But clearly it's one of those things where if they get it right, the upside from here is huge.
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah. They also have I can't pronounce half these things. Magen Tidal Project. All right. But they're producing a lot of power when you look at it. So anyway, that's one that we were sent in. I apologize for my poor description of the company. But Cymec Atlantis, one for everybody to have a little look at. We'll maybe go away and do a bit more work on it too.
Yeah.
Now, the other one I was sent in, and this is where we don't really cover biotech. The way I'm feeling at the moment, we could do with covering biotech, but anyway, that's another story. But it's basically a biotech company that somebody suggested that I should have a look at. And it's called Volition. It's actually listed on the New York Stock Exchange. It's about 100 million market cap or so. And they are basically, what is interesting to me on this one is they're basically looking at the way of taking blood samples and diagnosing them and hopefully therefore preventing all sorts of early diseases, particularly cancer and sepsis as well, which is a very hot topic at the moment. I suppose my one, this is the Holy Grail. We know that from Theranos and the wonderful Elizabeth Holmes, who just sent to jail for fraud. This is not like Theranos. It's actually based in Belgium, just happens to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. But trying to take a blood sample and analyze what could be wrong with you is the holy grail of biotech, really, isn't it? It's non-invasive. It allows you to catch things very, very early. And clearly, I've never looked at this company before. Excuse me, apologize. But it does look as though they've got some really interesting biotechnology capability here. The stock has actually been pretty flat for a while now. In fact, it's been a lot higher than it was back in sort of 2020. It was up above $6. It's now about $2. So you're not getting in at an expensive price. So again, I haven't really done the work on it, Phil, but it's one that I think our listeners again should have a look at. So that is Volition.
All right. Well, thank you for a listener sending in that idea to us. That was very good.
Likewise, by the way, if both companies, be it Cymac or Volition, hear this podcast and they want to come and have a little talk to us to give us a more in-depth view of their companies, we'd be very happy to listen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So on that note, what's your tip for 2023, Phil?
Right. Well, we'll quickly do the old caveat thing. I do not cover this as an analyst, so our listeners do need to do their homework on this before making any investment decision. But I do think it's what's happening here is quite interesting at the moment. It's Centralnik, and the ticker for that is CNIC. The market cap is £390 million. It's a software business. And they've got their software platforms enable what they say distribution of domain names to customer groups, including small businesses, corporate customers, resellers, domain name investors, domain name registrars. And what's interesting about this area, and there's a company called Group MBT, which was quoted previously and is now private, is that domain names, the management of domain names, the ownership of them is vitally important to companies and governments, because at the end of the day, it's a key part of their IP. And so this business is all about protecting customers by securing the brands and their IP online. And remember that those domain names will contain all the brand names are in the domain names as well. So we have our own domain name for VSA, of course. So that's what they do, Centralnik. They also provide email in relation to domain names, hosting, email software, website monetization software. So it's a broad tech offering, but all based around IP, all based around domain names. And they also have, and this is an area I need to look at more at, but they have online privacy offering for marketing platforms that are very, very broadly used. So they've got several billion users of these clocking through. So that's sort of what the business does. It has high recurring revenue, but it's been seeing very strong growth. And the revenue, their 9-month revenue increased by 88% to $527 million. Now, they've been making acquisitions, and we'll get onto that, but they had organic revenue growth, the 12 months ending 30th of September, of 66%. Organic revenue growth, and that has enabled them to generate a good amount of cash. And they've reduced, they geared up, they borrowed money and they've been making acquisitions, but it's reduced their leverage as well, from 2.2 times EBITDA at the end of 21 to 1.2 times. So growing sales, generating cash, reducing debt, which is all very, very good. Their full year outcome is expected. They come out with a statement this week saying to be at least in line with the upper end of market expectations, and they'll have a Q4 trading update on the 30th of January. And their CEO, Ben, who founded the company, and grew it very significantly from IPO, I think it was 2013, is retiring, and the FD who's been with the company is stepping up. It's cash generation. It says they're going to launch a maiden share buyback before the year end. So that is another good thing. And it says, looking forward, we will review our approach to cash flow deployment within the business and expect a greater focus on return to shareholders versus M&A. So there's some pretty good fiscal things going on here with Centralnik, that will benefit shareholders. And I've been a little bit remiss, but from memory, this is on relatively low multiples as well.
You are being remiss. I'll tell you what, it's been a very steady performer, hasn't it? There's really nothing sort of going wrong here. I don't know the multiples off the top of my head. What I can tell you is it's got actually a pretty good share ownership structure. It's got a lot of really nice names on there, like Chelverton, Canaccord Genuity Wealth, Schroders, Herald Investment, BlackRock. And the other interesting I can tell you is that the turnover from the major shareholders in terms of changing their equity level is very, very low, which is normally a good sign that people buy this, sit with it, and hold it. So I think that looks quite interesting, actually, Phil. I think it's a good stock. Maybe again, if they'd like to come and talk to us, we'll talk more about them.
Absolutely. Anyway, that's my one to really have a good look at going into the new year.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to give mine now, right? And I'm doing it. I actually think it could be a real winner, but I'm doing it partially because we do know the company. Again, we don't act for them as we speak today. I'm going to say that because I'm actually very keen on this. But they spoke at our Aquis Showcase event day, and I think they came very close actually to winning it. And the company is called Equipmake. They floated back at the just as they floated, I can tell you, just as basically Russia was invading Ukraine, which wasn't the best of timings. And they did raise £10 million, but all that money basically was EIS money. The major institutions didn't really come in, but not help because of the war in Ukraine. But what I like, I know you've been up to their factory, so to speak. I'm actually going up next week with you, Phil. We're going to Norfolk. But these guys are what I describe as real clever engineers, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And they've developed their own electric motors and inverter technology.
Correct. And I think it's very clever. And I think there's massive demand for it globally. And I think the real debate that this company's got to try and get around is they have a globally winning product. The question is how to capitalize upon it. And it is probably to go down the license and royalty model, because, you know, we know that they're talking to a lot of big companies all around the world. You can't do everything, but where you've got some brilliant IP, if you can license and royalty, it's a win for everybody. You don't have to have huge amounts of capital to go out and build these things all around the world. And it means that if you're a country, you can build your own business, which helps stimulates the economy of that own country. So I think if they switch to that model, they would be able to very rapidly grow the company to a really quite extraordinary size. So, and it's not just, I mean, they're sort of quite well known for re-engineering buses, aren't they? To make them electric buses, and they can put their electrification in. And they've actually won contracts for that. Again, I sort of see, what I find interesting is there's a bit of an ARM model here to be copied. You know, they've got this great product and it could go global very rapidly if they license and royalty, I think. Now, as I say, we're going up next week, aren't we, Phil?
We are.
So I'll have more of an understanding. I didn't describe this very well. I am under the weather. I apologise, all listeners. But have you got anything you'd say on top of that?
Yeah, I would actually. If you get electric motor technology and inverter technology right, there are not actually many companies in this space. The fact that they're already looking at sort of larger bus companies in particular, because there's tens of thousands of buses around the world, it's a big old market, and they're getting interest, shows that the technology is good. They're getting very early validation. They're also, they do produce the motors and inverter tech itself, the hardware at the plant. I mean, it is important because you will need initially to get the hardware evaluated by customers and proven in the market, which is what they're doing. And then that can lead, as Andrew says, very much to a license and royalty, probably a bigger player involved and addressing global markets. But to be honest, themselves, they're already looking very close and active in the South American market. It was a huge amount of buses. So, so very good old bloody advanced engineering from the UK. And we need more companies like this. So yeah, good one to look at.
But what you could see is general institutions coming on board with this one, I think. Because I think they'll like it. It's 50 million market cap now, and that would really drive the share price. Anyway, those are our four little Christmas presents for you. Just finally, because we've done our 30 minutes.
Yeah.
We sort of forgot what we mentioned last year. I think you went for Spirent, didn't you?
I think I did. Yes, and I think Spirent on last year is flat.
Flat. Absolutely flat. And that's a win.
It's a win. It means I've outperformed the general tech markets and the Nasdaq, which is down about 29%. And before I go, I have got the Central multiples up here for investors to take a look at. It's trading on EV revenue of 0.7 times, and this is from Icon data, forecast data, and an EV bit of 7 times and a PE of 9 times for December 2023. Those are what we call low multiples.
All right. I think last year I picked Invinity Energy Systems, and I'm sorry, I'm down 52%. It's not been my greatest effort. But next year it's all going to get better, I promise. Look, on that note, we are going to shut down for Christmas, and actually I will be in the States for the first 2 weeks of January marketing VSA around various cities: St. Louis, Boston, New York, Philadelphia. So we may have to just go on pause and start again towards the second half of January. But in the meantime, everybody have a wonderful Christmas. Have a good New Year. Have a good break. If you've got any thoughts or questions, as usual, always do feel free to contact us. We're very, very happy to talk about things. And finally, to myself, I hope I get better and can actually do a better podcast next time.
Andrew, get well soon. Have a great Christmas. And to all our listeners, have a wonderful Christmas.